This is Active Recall. I'll be talking about the iPad Pro 2018. I've had it for, it's closing in on a month now, so I just wanted to share my thoughts. The format of this, I just wrote 25 questions. So these are kind of impressions of the iPad over a few weeks of use. And my first question was, what has everyone else covered? I wrote this down because I've watched a lot of reviews, read a lot of reviews, and other people's impressions of the iPad Pro. I think it's pretty well covered that the hardware is really good. As far as like CPU and internals, a lot of people have been pleasantly surprised with how fast it's able to render videos. It doesn't really lag. And I also want to recommend a few videos by other people on using the iPad for work. I think you should really check out Jonathan Morrison's videos covering the iPad. He's a video editor, and he has a video showing him using it to edit a video. He also has interviews with other creators. So he has one with Henny the Business, and he makes music with the iPad, and then also with someone who doesn't use iPad but just getting the impressions, where Henny and Ken Lewis are talking about the iPad Pro. And yeah, it's great to see that Ken Lewis is pretty impressed by it. He arranged some parts of all of the lights, so yeah, just like a song with a special place in my heart. Anyway, next question: how has USB-C affected you so far? I have not a bunch, but I have a MacBook and a couple other USB-C devices that I've had from before I had the iPad Pro. So I do have the chargers, and it is nice that I can just use the same charger. That said, I do have a bunch of lightning chargers around the house, so it probably would have been good to have that too. But it is nice to have that ability to charge from the iPad to the phone. It's not like I use that regularly, but in the past few weeks I have used it a few times, and it's always just one of those things that I'm really happy about when it happens. Then I also have, when I got the MacBook, I bought a monitor that attaches to USB-C, so that has been nice. I've been able to just plug my iPad into that monitor and then use the other devices that are plugged into it. The external monitor support, I'll get to that next, but I do actually, let me just go to that. So how's the external monitor support? I haven't used it that much. I did attach it, that was nice. I haven't done a ton of like editing with the external monitor for the preview windows or anything like that. I'm excited for what Apple will do in the next iOS version. I get the sense that they will make a bunch of iPad Pro or iPad updates, so hopefully external monitor support is better, and hopefully other app creators use the external monitor support and figure out ways to improve their own apps with it. But it has been nice to use the USB-C attachments through plugged into my monitor, particularly this microphone. So I'm using a Blue Snowball right now. That's been good. How is the new pencil? I'm super happy with it. Size-wise, it's a little smaller. I don't know that I feel the difference there. I do feel the difference in the texture a little bit. So the old one was smoother, just like along the side, not the tip. And this one a little more, I guess, like matte or rougher. Again, doesn't make too huge of a difference, but I think that aspect, it's an improvement. The best thing about it is that it charges on the side of the iPad. This switches it from, with my old iPads, I kind of always assumed that I would have a discharged pencil. Now I always have like a fully charged one. I don't think about it at all anymore. With my previous ones, there were so many times where I would take my iPad out and then try to use the pencil, connect it, and then see I have like 3% on it. Over and over and over. This happened often. So it's nice to have to never think about that. It attaches really well, that it sticks to it pretty good. I put it in and out of my backpack. I never really worry about it falling off accidentally or falling on the ground. Yeah, nice snap to it when it connects. Magnets are great. And speaking of magnets, how is the new Smart Folio keyboard? Oh wait, one thing. So the pencil, also I do like the double tap to switch tools. I have been getting used to that, and it is nice to just switch to the eraser, switch back in a lot of different apps. And John Gruber has a good improvement in mind where he says like the one thing he would improve is double tapping, and then you'd feel some haptic feedback to know that it's switched. Right now, usually the tool or like the app will have some indication of it. But yeah, the haptic feedback would be great. Okay, yeah. New Smart Folio keyboard. I thought I wouldn't like the back cover. I usually don't get cases with back covers. I don't care too much about scratches on things that aren't the screen. Yeah, I'm actually like pretty lax if I got a scratch on my iPhone, the most recent one, pretty like within a few days. It doesn't bug me too much. But anyway, that aside, the nice thing about the back cover is that, again, magnets make it easier to attach. It's not like it was super difficult to attach it on the old iPad Pros, the Smart Keyboard, but I did have to, there is some navigation there where you want to connect the edge, and now I just I can do it now with my eyes closed. Not the most amazing thing to do with your eyes closed, but it is nice that it's so easy to attach now. Where it can get weird is when I want to read something, so I flip the cover back, and then the keys are showing on the back, or I can feel my hand grabbing the keys. When I have that grip. So it is nice that the screen is completely symmetrical so that I can rotate the device around so that whatever hand I'm using is grabbing onto the part of the keyboard in the back that doesn't have keys on it. Next up, Face ID. It works. Again, this is another thing that it just works really well in all orientations. When I'm using it on a table, typing, when I'm reading a book with it, it just works really well. And again, it's another thing similar to the pencil where the best thing about it is I don't think about it. I don't think about charging the pencil. I don't think about unlocking my device. And these are things that happen over and over and over. So it is that idea of like toothbrush journeys, things that you do every day or multiple times a day that they've improved. So, yep, really happy with it. I remember when there were like teasers or like leaks about the iPad, people were wondering if Face ID would work in landscape, and I didn't really see the big deal with that. I thought like it wouldn't be that bad if I have to turn it to portrait once in a while, and now I see how wrong I was. It is nice that I don't ever really have to turn it or think about it. Sometimes I cover it, my finger's covering it, but there's nice indicators explaining that what's going wrong with Face ID so you can fix it really quickly. What's it like compared to your past devices? So I have a MacBook, 12-inch, and form factor wise, it feels about the same. I guess it is a little bit heavier, but it does feel like a larger, I do feel the difference in screen size, where I do really like the 12.9-inch screen. So other than the MacBook, I guess previous iPad Pros, I've had pretty much like every iteration and every size for some amount of time. Compared to the past 10.5-inch, I can feel that it is bigger, and that's both plus and minus. So the screen being bigger is great. It doesn't feel as cramped, but it doesn't, definitely like the 10.5-inch. The previous generation felt super small when I was carrying it around. And then compared to I had the first iPad Pro, the first 12.9-inch. So yeah, it's an improvement over that in every way because screen size is the same and it's much smaller. That thing always did feel kind of gigantic, which was good when I was drawing on it, but anytime I was carrying it around or when I would see other people carrying it, it looked almost like comical how big the thing was. And I don't get that feeling with the current 12.9-inch. So are you happy you got the 12.9-inch? I'd say absolutely. Like I said, I had the 12.9-inch for the first generation, and then last year I got the 10.5-inch with the updated, like the much better pencil performance. But I always kind of missed, so I would still find myself drawing on the 12.9-inch. just to have more real estate. So now that I have that real estate in the smaller form factor, I love it. Definitely last year, like the 10.5 for the portability, like I mentioned, it felt super small. But when I was using it, it always felt just a little bit too cramped for anything I was doing, especially when it comes to multitasking. So yeah, definitely happy I got the 12.9 inch. It was kind of a no-brainer for picking that size. I have this question: when do you miss the 10.5 inch? Pretty much when I'm reading stuff. The 10.5 inch felt like it wasn't there. Like, yeah, just this tiny device. And now, I don't really miss that too often. So yeah, once in a while when I'm reading is pretty much it. So what storage size did you get? I got the 256 gigabyte. I think that's what I had with the 10.5 inch that I have, and maybe the 12.9 inch, but I never run too low on storage space. I haven't in the past. Maybe I will with this one, but I don't think so. Anytime I do get close, I'll just delete. Usually it's like some podcasts or a bunch of images, and I'll just move the images to my iMac. Just move it off the device, but we'll see. I think 256 will be fine. I don't end up using a lot of storage space on these iOS devices. What do you do with it day to day? I have used it pretty much every day since I got it, so usually it's writing, doing a little bit of drawing. And I have been, of course, since it's a new device, I have been trying to do more with it as far as just like testing out how much I can get done with the device. So I have been doing some video editing, some audio recording and editing for podcasts, for making these videos. But otherwise, yeah, writing is probably like I love writing on the iPad. And then drawing, it's kind of this unrivaled device for drawing. If you use an Apple Pencil, I think a lot of digital artists have said as much, that it is their favorite digital drawing tool, just how good the pencil feels. And making presentations, I love making presentations with Keynote and the iPad Pro. So that always comes to this question, and you can check out every other video that talks about this. Can it replace a laptop? And the conclusion, like, it depends what you do with the laptop. So no, it doesn't have Mac OS. I do sometimes miss Mac OS, but if you're just writing, blogging, things like that, then it can replace a laptop for a lot of use cases. What I think is that it can definitely become the device that you use most of the time. So for the majority of the time, or majority of the things that you're doing on a laptop, you can do on the iPad. Especially if most of that's just like consumption. But is it going to replace like I don't know, if you're using like an iMac Pro for video editing or like you're doing like 3D rendering with some kind of rendering farm. I don't know if I'm even using these terms right. It's not going to replace that. But I would suspect it can do a lot more than you might think if you have dismissed it as a device already. Anyway, check out other videos. There's plenty of like creators that have been making a lot of stuff with the iPad Pro. Here's another one. Can it replace an analog notebook? This also depends what you're using the analog notebook for. If you're just sketching once in a while, then I think it can do that. Or even if you are like replacing a sketchbook, I think it could do that. Depending on how much you believe in digital tools versus where you stand there. As far as replacing something like a bullet journal, there are times where digital is better and times when it's not. I'll make another video about this, but again, it depends on what you want out of it. The writing experience is great though. I've definitely done a lot of writing in it, like longhand writing. Just feels great with it. There are some things that an analog notebook has that will be hard to replace, as far as like being able to skim a notebook, or just that experience of with a bullet journal, you're reviewing old pages and moving them to new pages, and you kind of do that bookmark thing with your finger. Stuff like that, you can't really, it's hard to replace digitally. Anyway, some aspects yes, and some it won't. what do you think about working with iOS? This kind of comes to that. Previously I talked about having a laptop. So some things on iOS are better. I love working on iOS as far as like focus goes. I find now more and more and more. I kind of dread turning on my MacBook or my iMac just because I know there's going to be windows from a few days ago, a few weeks ago, and it always just turns into this distraction. Or I just feel bad about like I have something open that I was working on that I didn't finish. Then I like half-heartedly try to finish it and then don't get to what I wanted to do in the first place. Anyway, I do enjoy how focused the iOS experience is. And just how fast and like snappy things can feel. Where it probably falls short is just web browsing. So it's not going to be this full-fledged web browser experience, and there are times, I guess one example that I have is I was booking tickets for the holidays, and I just knew to expect like not as good of an experience with airline websites on iOS. Kind of just a fact of life of like the browser experience on desktop versus iOS. How is it for reading books? It's great. It's also a little too big. The screen's great, all of that. But yeah, I guess this is where I miss the 10.5 most, is just holding it, and that's where it can feel a little there's too much text on the page if I don't have the split screen view, and then reading it holding it in landscape feels a little odd, even though it shouldn't, because it's kind of like holding a hardcover book open. Anyway, if you do a lot of like, if most of what you do with the iPad is using it as a tablet in your bed, then maybe go for the smaller size. But I have a Kindle for most of my reading, so yeah, so it is a little big. Anyway, how is multitasking? These next questions are kind of iOS questions. Anyway, I do use multitasking pretty often, so I'll have Evernote. I use Evernote a lot, and then I'll pull up a browser to take notes there, pull up Kindle, take notes. And it's great on the bigger size iPad. And also, as far as like the hardware goes, it never feels like things are laggy when I have split view and even the third app open in that whatever the term is, where it's going like an overlay view. Multitasking works great. How is drawing on an iPad? So I'm putting these questions on top of this drawing that I'm doing of Carnage, and yeah, I just want to say check out Jim Lee's channel where he shows how to draw. It's been one of my favorite things, is just having the iPad and following along while drawing. I draw like quite a bit, even though I'm not. I would never say like I'm an artist or anything. But it is fun to draw on the iPad, and using the different drawing apps, having the different tools has been great. And I'm looking forward to doing more of it on the iPad. I think it makes it a lot of fun to just be able to bring this device that lets you draw with all these different tools everywhere. How is writing? I think this is one of the things that is better on an iPad than other devices, like completely better. Well, maybe. I guess like if you... anyway, it is very nice to start writing on an iPad. I think MG Siegler has a good article on this where he writes almost everything on the iPad, or starts writing it there, and then he'll finish it on his MacBook, or I think on his desktop. In any case, there's a lot of different writing apps. So Scrivener's available, Ulysses. I use Ulysses, and I use Evernote a lot. So in that case, if you're just writing and trying to stay focused on what you're writing, iPad is great for that. But when doing a lot of research, or like pulling research together and that kind of thing, and finishing different posts, then you do have to make adjustments. But once they're done, it can be good, especially if you automate different things on the iPad. How's multimedia editing on an iPad? I'll just talk about like videos, and audio editing is pretty much what I've done. It's definitely possible, and it's actually like a pretty good experience. It's probably better than what I expected at first. It is not as good as having like just missing the mouse and keyboard, or missing the mouse is one thing. So that's where it can fall short. And then the file system, as far as like I think it's somewhat overblown. People talking about like the file system and that kind of thing, because there is files, and in a lot of cases, that's granted, I'm not a professional editor in any capacity, but I'm usually just working with the most recent files, and those are always pretty available, even if they do have to go in your photo roll or your camera roll. It seems fine, and I think you can do more than you might have expected. Shortcuts are great. I'm excited to see what other people are doing with them. I use shortcuts every day. So yeah, just as an example, I have one that I use for writing every day that will just remind me to think of 3 different sources. I have a bunch of these different like things to just come up with an outline, where I have one that will go from like a Kindle highlight to a quick outline, different topics. I also have some that will open Overcast, links in Overcast. Another one to just like, I'll use it the night before to plan the next day, and it'll just run through that. These aren't the most creative shortcuts. There's a lot more like creative stuff that you can check out online, but shortcuts are one of the best things on iOS as far as defaulting to automating different things, where on Mac OS, I rarely used Automator. It wasn't as friendly as shortcuts, so check shortcuts out. Who would you recommend an iPad Pro to? I think a lot of people. I just think it's a great device. It is pretty pricey, so if it's gonna be, I think it's great as a second device. I definitely recommend it as a second device. I am getting closer to thinking like I could use this as my only like computing device for, maybe not. I guess it's hard for me to say that while also still having the other devices around, kind of as backups. But I'm definitely using my iPad Pro more than any of my other devices right now. I just bought one. What quick tips do you have? So use Command H to replace your home screen button. That's one of them. Explore shortcuts, and also remember AirDrop. I'm guessing if you have an iPad Pro, you also have an iPhone, and you might know about AirDrop, and you might even use it. But I find that a lot of people just don't really, like, they still text pictures to each other, to their friends, when they could just be using AirDrop in a lot of cases. And yeah, AirDrop's been great for, especially working with, I have an iPhone, and as I mentioned, I have all these other devices, so I'll AirDrop things from here to there and back and all of that as I'm working on different things. What free apps would you recommend? So use Notes. Notes is great, especially like thinking back to where it was 2 years ago. Notes has improved quite a bit. I use Evernote, which does have like a paid version, which I do pay for, but I did use the free one for quite a long time. And then Shortcuts, again, you're going to use these anyway. Shortcuts, Keynote. Keynote's a lot more powerful than people might know. If you're doing like simple motion graphics and making videos, it's a great app. And then what paid apps would you recommend? I use MindNote a lot for mind mapping. Procreate is great for all your drawing. And then either GoodNotes or Notability, Notebook, any of those notebook apps. And I've been using Luma, both of their apps for video editing. And then I'm just like naming a bunch of different apps. Anyway, Ferrite for audio editing. And then I use Just Press Record for recording audio. And those are kind of my like main ones that I use. Oh, Ulysses. Great for text editing. Anyway, I'll probably do a separate one on all of these different apps, but thanks for checking this out. And yeah, check out the Jim Lee video. I think, yeah, if you want to learn how to draw Carnage, he does a much better version than what I have here. And I guess I'll let the rest of the video play with my drawing, but hit subscribe if you like this. Or just a thumbs up would be good too. Thanks a lot.